The minion attacks and the bros attacks from Mario and Luigi Bowser's Inside Story are pretty good. I like the lineup, but I gotta say, I like the lineup of games like Dream Team and Paper Jam more than this game. I don't think that the lineup is as bad as Superstar Saga. I mean, obviously Superstar Saga doesn't really have that bad of a lineup, but I mean, it's just not as good as the top two games that I mentioned. But that just means that it's gonna be a more varied ranking. There's gonna be a decent amount of them I just don't like. There's also going to be a decent amount of them that I really do enjoy. Just going to make it a more interesting list, which is obviously what you guys want. So I'm not even going to hold you guys back. Well, actually, I am going to hold you guys back because I gotta say, I am still trying to hit 1,000 subscribers before summer break hits. So if you're not subscribed yet, or you know a Mario RPG fan that isn't subscribed, tell them to subscribe or subscribe yourself. I'd really appreciate if you did that because I am still trying to hit that 1,000 subscribers. We're on a really good pace. We're at least gaining 5 subs a day. But, I mean, I want to increase it to 10 subs a day. Like, that's a ridiculous goal, but I really want that to happen. Especially for a small channel like me, I'd really appreciate that. But other than that, let's get started. The Bob-omb Blitz is my least favorite bros attack in any Mario and Luigi game. Not just in Bowser's Inside Story, in any Mario and Luigi game. I hate this attack. And it's for 2 reasons mainly. One, of course, is the controls. For Bowser, for all of his special attacks, he doesn't use buttons or the D-pad. He uses the stylus. How fun. How fortunate of us. But, I mean, the other attacks they work for, the Koopa Corpse and the Shy Guy Squad works pretty well, so they could have just worked perfectly with the Bob-omb Blitz, doesn't it? No, of course it doesn't. The reason why it doesn't work here is that you have a very limited amount of time to line up each Bob-omb. And since you're using the stylus, it's not as precise as just using the D-pad or buttons. So you're trying to be very precise lining each Bob-omb up. And if you don't try to be precise, either all of them are just going to walk off and barely hit them, or you get the ones that you lined up perfectly to hit the enemy, but the other ones that you didn't have enough time to line up just run off into the distance. Which means that you have no point of using this attack because you're never going to be able to get max damage either way you actually play it, which is so irritating. But the other thing is that why would you even use this attack? You have the Koopa Corpse and the Shy Guy Squad, which fills both niches that you need for this game. The Koopa Corpse can attack normal enemies, and I don't even use bros attacks for normal enemies, so you'll see that attack be lower than you think. But the Shy Guy Squad is really good for bosses and single enemies. So that's why I don't think that the Bob-omb Blitz is very useful, because it doesn't really have a niche in that regard. And you may say that, oh, well, I mean, it does make enemies dizzy, which, that's fair. The problem, though, is that I'm literally just going to be trying to line up every single Bob-omb, not trying to focus on getting the dizzy effect. It's just not worth it at that point. I'd rather just try to get as much damage as possible with the Shy Guy Squad than try to use the Bob-omb Blitz for its dizziness. And that's just really sad. There's no use for this bros attack, and to top it all off, it controls terribly. This is my least favorite bros attack in any Mario and Luigi game. And you guys might be saying, oh, he probably has it really low because he'll never get excellence on it. And yeah, I don't get excellence on it. You're right. But the problem is that I don't get excellence right now, but I don't think even with practice, I'll ever get excellence with it. And that's why it's my least favorite. I'll never be able to pull it off successfully, which is really stupid. The Mighty Meteor is easily the most useless bros attack in a Mario and Luigi game. Why would you use this thing? You get the snack basket before this, so you have all ground enemies covered with a really powerful attack. But let's say you have air enemies, you might use the Mighty Meteor, right? No, you probably will use the spin pipe, but the spin pipe is optional, so maybe you can use the Mighty Meteor in that case? Well, no, you probably will just use the Super Bouncer. But hey, I didn't collect all the attack pieces in the energy hold. Why didn't you do that? I mean, fair, it's kind of hard to find those attack pieces, but even then, you have the non-optional bros attack with the Yoo-Hoo Cannon, which is better in every regard. It's so easy to pull off compared to the Mighty Meteor, which needs practice. Now here's the thing, it kind of compares just like the Smash Egg from Partners in Time, but the Smash Egg actually has use in the Kamek fight, and it's pretty easy to use. Obviously, it also needs some practice, but not as much as the Mighty Meteor. The only thing that the Mighty Meteor actually has is that it does more damage, but I mean, I'm pretty sure that meteors are tougher than eggs. I might haven't fact-checked that, but I'm pretty sure eggs aren't as tough as a meteor. But, I mean, comparing every single bros attack to the Mighty Meteor in this game, there's just no use for it. I literally listed just bros attacks that are non-optional. There's so little bros attacks that are non-optional, and they still replace the Mighty Meteor. That is pathetic, and that is why the Mighty Meteor is at number 15. The Goomba Storm is useful for like 2 areas and 1 boss fight. That's it. Because the Goomba Storm is the first ever minion attack you get in the game. So I can't really say that it's useless because you only have 1 at the time. But the thing is that it also doesn't control great. You have to try to tap on each Goomba, which is very hard because a ton of Goombas actually come into the battlefield. And the other thing is that you have to use the stylus to tap on them. I only have a finger. I don't have a stylus. So because of this, I have to use my finger, and it's not as responsive as just using a stylus normally. And this isn't as big of a problem with the Bob-omb Blitz, but here it's a huge problem because the Goombas have a small hitbox where I have big fingers. So because of this, it's definitely harder to pull this attack off with an excellent. It's possible though, unlike the Bob-omb Blitz, so because of that, I had to put it at number 14. But because of how useless it is after you get the Shy Guy squad, and how annoying it is to control sometimes, it has to be at number 14. The Fire Flower here is not as good as other games. Well, first off, I don't really think that there's a use for this Fire Flower. Obviously, you're going to be fighting the Scuttlebug here, but that's it. That's really the only reason you're going to be using the Fire Flower. And even then, I use the Green Shell, personally, because I just don't think that it's as responsive compared to other Fire Flowers. It's just my second problem with this thing. Compared to the Fire Flower and Paper Jam and Partners in Time, Bowser Inside Story does not have as responsive of fireballs, which is really weird and confusing because it doesn't even use the stylus, it uses buttons. And I guess the button mashing could definitely mess you up, but for some reason it just isn't as responsive for my DS, or I'm just bad. I mean, I'm not normally bad with Fire Flowers, so I guess it might just be this game. I'm not sure, but the thing is that the Fire Flower just isn't as responsive, but it also doesn't have a use, because obviously you could just use the Green Shell if I'm struggling with the Fire Flower, which means, well, there's not really that much of a difference. Especially because the Green Shell is just a little bit less BP and does a tiny bit less damage. So there's not really that much of a bad payoff if I'm not using the Fire Flower. And yes, it has the burn effect, but why would you use the Fire Flower for that reason specifically? That's really odd. So because of that, I don't think the Fire Flower is actually that useful compared to other Bros attacks in this game. So it lands at number 13. The Super Bouncer originally was supposed to go at number 13, but I decided to bump it up above the Fire Flower because I completely mastered this attack. I can get an excellent on it every single time, so that's always good, and I think the controls work pretty well. But there's 2 things that just sink it pretty low. Obviously, the most common one is that it's useless. You have the Yoo-Hoo Cannon before this, so because of that, you could just use the Yoo-Hoo Cannon. It's the exact same amount of BP, and it basically does the exact same amount of damage. So why wouldn't you just use the Yoo-Hoo Cannon? I don't get it. But let's say you use the Super Bouncer over the Yoo-Hoo Cannon. That's fine, but you get the Spin Pipe pretty soon after. So because of that, it gets useless almost instantly, or pretty soon after you get the Super Bouncer. Which means you're only going to be using it for like 1 or 2 bosses. Which is obviously better than stuff like the Fire Flower, but it's still not that great. Which is why it deserves to be at number 12. Also, this is a very long Bros attack compared to the Yoo-Hoo Cannon. So because of that as well, I'd rather just use Yoo-Hoo Cannon, which means I'm going to be going with the option of this Bros attack being replaced instantly, which instantly sinks it to number 12. The Green Shell is a better version of the Goomba Storm in my opinion. It's useful for a bit longer, and it controls better. A lot better, in fact. But I gotta say, it's still the first Bros attack in the game. So even though I don't even like the Fire Flower, and I am going to be using the Green Shell over the Fire Flower, once you get the Jump Helmet, stop abusing those Koopas to get those Green Shells. There's no point. I'm never going to be using the Green Shell again after you get the Jump Helmet. The Green Shell tries to specialize on doing as much damage to one target as possible. But the Jump Helmet does the exact same thing, but does it so much better than the Green Shell. The Green Shell doesn't do nearly enough damage to even compare to the Jump Helmet. So because of that, it's just useless instantly. And again, for people that like the Fire Flower, it's going to replace the Green Shell faster than I normally do it. So I'm probably ranking it higher than some people would. But it still is not a great Bros attack. It gets replaced almost instantly. I do like the controls of it, of course, but it's still not great compared to other Bros attacks. The Koopa Corpse is a pretty good attack to use. It does a decent amount of damage, and it's pretty easy to pull off for some people. But I gotta say, it's not great for me personally. One, I'd rather just use the Shy Guy squad. I think it just does more damage and it's way easier to pull off. And that's the main reason why I have this attack pretty low. I'm not good at this attack. At all. Like, I'm really bad. Now, people would say that I'm really bad with the Bob-omb Blitz, and that's why I put it at the bottom. But no, the reason why this attack is low is just straight up because I'm not good at it. Yeah, that's a bit unfair, but to be honest, it doesn't matter to me. It's just, I'm not good at this attack at all. And that's why I'd rather use the Shy Guy squad and why I barely ever use this attack, which is why it's so low. Which sounds really dumb, but that's why I put it higher, because I can actually see people using this attack. But for me personally, I'm not going to be using it. We're on to the single-digit placements, and that also means we're on to the good bros attacks from this game. And the first one up is the spin pipe. Well, let's be real here. Basically, how you feel about the spin pipe is based on if you get the magic window and when. Now, for me personally, I get the magic window before I get the spin pipe, which means I barely ever use the spin pipe. But if you don't, you get it right before you go into Peach's castle, then I think the spin pipe is useful for a decent amount of time. So because of this, I think it works in that regard. Obviously, it's not going to be replaced by the mighty meteor, so you're going to be using it for a long time until you get the magic window. And if you don't actually get it, you're going to be using the spin pipe throughout the entire game, which is good. But again, I get the magic window before I get the spin pipe. So because of this, I'm not going to be really focusing on using the spin pipe over the magic window. Now, obviously, I'm not going to be using the magic window that early in the game, because there's no point. It's too much BP. But it's definitely something to keep in mind. So because of that, I think the spin pipe is the lowest out of the good bros attacks. It's still really easy to pull off with having a fun challenge, but you just replace it for me personally almost instantly. So because of that, it has to be at number 9. The jump helmet is really good, and that combination of the super strike and the jump helmet is so overpowered, and I really enjoyed that. But there's one problem. What happens if you use the jump helmet without the super strike? I mean, it does a decent amount of damage, but once you get other bros attacks in this game, you're probably going to start forgetting about the jump helmet and just not using it as much, which is definitely a bit disappointing, and that's why it's only at number 8. The necessity of the super strike kind of makes it a bit lower, and obviously, all bros attacks could use a super strike. Yeah, I know that, but the thing is that the jump helmet needs a super strike. I mean, look at the falling star. Obviously, the super strike would really help, but you don't need it. It still will be a really powerful attack without the super strike. So because of this, I don't use the jump helmet that much after I get stuff like the Yoo-hoo cannon or the super bouncer, or mainly the magic window and the spin pipe. So because of that, I'm not going to be using the jump helmet for very long, which is definitely a bit disappointing. The Yoo-hoo cannon is a really good attack, and it has the really special ability of being the easiest bros attack in any Mario and Luigi game. I take that back. I think there might be bros attacks that are easier, but at the very least, this is the easiest bros attack from Bowser's Inside Story to pull off. I barely ever fail at this. So because of that, it's going to be a very easy one to use, which is nice. But it gets replaced. Like, it doesn't get replaced by the super bouncer. I mean, for some people it could, and it could have been replaced by the super bouncer for me personally. And I do use it over the Yoo-hoo cannon, but it doesn't actually replace it because I can actually see other people trying to just use the Yoo-hoo cannon over the super bouncer. But once you get the spin pipe, if you get it at all, and that also goes to the magic window, yeah, you're not going to be using the Yoo-hoo cannon anymore, which is a bit disappointing. You're using it for around 3 bosses, which is pretty good. But once you get the spin pipe and magic window, there's no use for the Yoo-hoo cannon anymore, and that's why it's only at number 7. I do enjoy this, and I do like that it's so easy to pull off, but at the end of the day, it still gets replaced, and that's why it's at number 7. The Magic Koopa Mob is a pretty good attack. It's pretty powerful, but you're going to be getting the Brogy Bonker right after you get the Magic Koopa Mob. You just get out of the Deep Castle right when you get the Magic Koopa Mob and go to Brock Monsieur to get the Brogy. You gotta get the Brogy. It's so powerful, and that kind of renders the Magic Koopa Mob useless. But it's not completely useless, because the one thing that the Magic Koopa Mob does have over the Brogy Bonker is that it's much easier to pull off to get an excellent for. And that's good, because if you don't get an excellent with the Brogy Bonker, it's pretty much useless. So because of that, I can see some use with the Magic Mob. If you want a safe attack to pull off that is still powerful, then you go with the Magic Koopa Mob. And that's why it's still at number 6 and not any lower. It still definitely gets replaced instantly, literally instantly, by the Brogy Bonker, but it's not a bad attack, and since it's easy to pull off, I can definitely still see myself using this attack, just randomly throughout bosses if I need to. So that's why I think it still deserves to be at number 6, not any higher though. The Shy Guy Squad is a very easy attack that does a lot of damage, and it only costs 8 BP. That's so cheap for a very powerful attack, and that's so nice. But the problem is that this is the last Bros attack that we talk about on the list that gets replaced. It gets replaced by the Brogy Bonker, which is the last Bros attack you get for Bowser. Don't get me wrong, but it still does get replaced, and that's something that the top 4 can't say. The top 4 doesn't get replaced by anything. I used all 4 of them throughout the game, and that is why I don't think that the Shy Guy Squad deserves to be in the top 4. It's a good attack, it's very easy to pull off, and it does a lot of damage, but since it gets replaced, it has to be in the number 5. It can't get any higher. The Snack Basket is the last Bros attack I can really point out a major flaw for, but before we even get into that major flaw, I just want to talk about how overpowered you think this is. The Snack Basket, right when you get it, you feel so overpowered because it does so much damage to all the ground enemies. It's ridiculous. It does like double the damage to stuff like the Spin Pipe if you really think about it, which is insane. But the key reason why it's not any higher and why it's not the top 3 is because it only attacks ground enemies, or enemies that are strictly on the ground with hitboxes on the ground. If they have like arms or something, or they're just in the air, you can't do any damage to them, which is really disappointing because that power could have been to really good use. But no, it only attacks the ground enemies, which again is a bit disappointing. The top 3 have no problems with them at all. But here, not attacking air enemies isn't a huge problem because, again, most bosses are on the ground. But for stuff like the final boss, it's not that useful. It only is useful to take out the legs for Fawful, and that's it. So because of that, I have to put it at number 4. And also, the top 3 have the most overpowered Bowser attack and a really cool combo that I'll talk about in the next segment. But moving on to that next segment. I have a really overpowered combo with the Falling Star and the Magic Window, but I'm not going to talk about this combo until I get to the Falling Star segment, because you need the Falling Star. You don't really need the Magic Window for the combo. You could replace it with stuff like the Spin Pipe, and honestly, you could just replace it with the more Falling Stars. Like, you could just use only Falling Stars and it would work. But just how it is, the Magic Window is a really good attack that's powerful, but I could definitely see people just ignoring it, just completely. One, it's endless, but it's really hard to go for as long as possible compared to stuff like the Red Shell or the Copy Flower or the Trampoline from Partners in Time. So because of this, it is a bit disappointing. Now obviously it's still overpowered just in general because it's endless, which is a good thing, and I do enjoy that, and it does a lot of damage. But I'd rather sometimes just use the Falling Star. I sometimes question why I use the Magic Window in general. And I don't even do that with the Snack Basket when I use that sometimes. So because of that, the Magic Window only deserves to be number 3. The most amount of damage with Bowser you can do in the entire game is with the Brogy Bonker, because it's the most powerful Bros attack in the entire game for Bowser. Not counting Super Strikes with Mario and Luigi, but if we're not counting Super Strikes, then it is the most powerful Bros attack in the game. No doubt. Here's the thing about it. It's so fun to just see every single Blitty just run into the enemy and damage it each time. And every single one has a chance of giving you a lucky hit, which means more and more damage, which is so nice. But the main problem with this attack and why it's not at number 1 is if you do not get an excellent, this attack is worthless. If you get a great, there's no point in using it. You should have just used the Magic Koopa Mob, which is a safer attack to use. But if you get an excellent with it, it's just so powerful. It does so much damage. You get all those lucky hits. The other thing, though, is that it doesn't really have a special ability that pushes it to number 1, unlike the number 1, where it has that special ability that I will talk about. But here, it just has all that raw power, which is nice for Bowser. It's not as nice for this ranking, but I gotta say, I still love this attack and use it every single time with every single boss right when I get it. I love this attack. Now, before I mention the ability of the Falling Star, I just gotta mention that this attack still does a lot of damage. Like, it does so much. I only think that the magic window does more, and that definitely leads to the combo. So the combo works like this. The main ability that this Falling Star actually introduces, and it's why it's at number 1, is because the ability lowers the defense of the enemy once you pull it off. Which means you just spam your most powerful attack after the magic window and you do a lot of damage. I think there's a chance of you getting to 1,000 damage with this attack. And then you introduce a super strike into it. And then you just do so much damage. You might even have a possibility of one-shotting a boss with this ability after you do defense down. Which is insane. And I love that so much because of it. But let's say the ability just doesn't work for a bit. You're still doing a lot of damage with the Falling Star, which means that you're still making a lot of progress with it. So because of that, you could just spam Falling Stars and the combo would still work, which is so overpowered, but it's so nice, and I love the attack because of it. The Falling Star is the most overpowered bros attack in Bowser's Inside Story, and I love it because of it. Thank you guys for watching this video. My next video will either be the 500 sub special, a video about Sticker Star, or another video about Bowser's Inside Story. It's one of those three. I'm still not sure yet. And again, if you lasted this long and you're not subscribed yet, I'd really appreciate if you subscribe. Again, I'm still trying to hit 1,000 subscribers before summer break starts, so I'd really appreciate if you subscribe. Or tell a Mario RPG fan to subscribe. Spread the word. I'd really appreciate that. But now, let's end the video here. I'll see you guys in the next one.